Okay, so we're breaking it up. I'm doing a little bit of an introduction, and I guess the best way to start out was why were we? Um, why am I standing in front of a tank? Yeah, so basically, Ann and I for years have wanted to see for ourselves what was going on at the border, and we recently got the opportunity. And we're standing here at Fort Bliss because Ann and I have base privileges, and we were able to stay in visitors' housing there. It's a pretty good deal. The interesting thing why I'm bringing it up is there's also a staging area for the additional troops that were coming in and contractors that were working on the wall, which I thought amazing because normally when you're doing a construction project, you hire the people locally. But evidently, what they were doing with this was getting somebody who was then shipping the workers, and they were staying there on the base. The other thing that I wanted to mention about Fort Bliss, well, we went to breakfast and they have a buffet, and I couldn't find the silverware. Evidently, what the silverware was in a dispenser. But I asked one of the soldiers who I saw had silverware where he got it, and as it turned out, he was Spanish speaking, or he was American soldier in uniform. But I just asked the guy, "Where do you get the forks?" He told me, and then he was with another guy. And the next thing they did was explain that they were citizens, right? Good. They were there on temporary duty because they spoke Spanish and they were supposed to be interpreters. But they felt as though they needed to explain to me that they were citizens. Despite the fact they're on an army base in an army uniform, they had to, they had this feeling of being another, and that hasn't left me. I wanted to share that with you how divisive this is. That the one guy was from Puerto Rico, the other guy didn't say where he picked his Spanish up. But they felt they needed to justify themselves.
Pretty good.
Yes.
The reason is we arrived there 5 days after Trump took office. So we arrived there January 25th. Yeah. Okay, so this is why there was this whole different vibe going on.
Right. So anyhow, and that is my part, and Ann is going to do the next few slides.
So, how this all came about was, as many of you know, I'm an associate with the Sisters of St. Joe's, based in Cape May, and I have been for many years, probably more than 10 now. And Sister Deidre is there in El Paso. She lives in Annunciation House, which is an organization that was started by Ruben Garcia. He's an activist in El Paso. But she works for the Dominicans, right, honey? It was the Dominicans that she worked for? No, it was the...
I'm sorry.
Do you remember?
Marinol.
Yeah. She works for the Marinol missionaries. So she put out an announcement in one of the many newsletters I get from the sisters that they were inviting associates and other sisters to join her in El Paso. Now, this was all taking place before Trump became president. This announcement went out months before Trump became president. I responded right away because, as Michael said, we've been wanting to do this for a long time. So when we got there, January 25th, many things had changed, but we spent the whole week with the sisters. So Sister Deidre is an immigration attorney and was helping the migrants who were coming to the border, and a lot of them, I'll show you a picture of Annunciation House and explain that a bit. But, so there's Sister Deidre, and then there's 3 novices from Canada. Actually, one was from Norway. Maori, she spoke English perfectly. This woman was 50 years old and becoming a nun. I was totally blown away. She was a widow with 2 adult sons. But in Canada, the Federation there allows widows to become nuns. And then there was another young nun there too, I think from Chicago. So there were a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us, including Michael. And this is a picture of the mountaintop overlooking El Paso and Mexico. So, as I said, Rico Garcia founded Annunciation House about 50 years ago. And he's a community activist. He is a American citizen, obviously. And Annunciation House has many satellite homes throughout El Paso where they were welcoming migrants who were being brought to them by the local border patrol, by ICE, and by the local sheriff. So these people had already been processed. They just need a place to get some clean clothes, get a shower, get a meal, get a ticket to wherever they're going, and be set on their way. Thousands of people were going through this shelter every week. Thousands. And there were about 3 other satellites. We went to one of them in El Paso. So this used to be a hub of activity before Donald Trump took office.
A hub of legal activity?
Yes, legal activity. Now, this is the house rules, and I'm going to translate for you. This was posted in the kitchen. Reglas a la casa.
Rules of the house.
Yes, rules of the house. So, and this is so interesting, los padres deber supervisar a sus hijos in lodo momento. So, fathers must supervise their children all the time.
No, their sons.
Their sons.
It's parents.
But padres refers to all parents.
It's, as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parents?
If it's,
Because to me, padres was fathers.
No,
if it's El Padre, it is the father, but if it's Los, just like Los
Then,
Hermanos,
okay, then I
it's
stand
brothers and
corrected.
sisters.
Thank you. So fathers have to supervise their
Parents.
children at all times. Los zapatos deber ser usados, so you have to wear shoes at all times. No one is permitted to eat in the dormitories. You can only eat in the kitchen or on the patio. And this is the times where breakfast, lunch, and dinner were served, 8, noon, and 6. And all telephones and electronic devices must be turned off at 10 o'clock. Okay? So this little piece of paper on the door in the kitchen was telling people the rules of the house. Okay, where am I? Oops, sorry. The dining room. Okay, so this is the dining room, obviously. And this used to be filled with people. That's Michael in the distance. Used to be filled with people. And when we were there were only 2 families. So they went from thousands of people a week to 2 families. I couldn't, of course, take pictures of anybody. I didn't want to do that, but at the meal times, this place used to be jam-packed. Yes?
I'm confused now. Are since they're legal, they're legal farm workers coming in, like?
They were processed through ICE, through the Border Patrol, legally.
Legally.
So they were permitted to come in, but they needed a place because of their trip, and we'll talk about that later, how they came. They needed clean clothes,
Yeah,
a
'cause you
shower,
were saying
food.
that.
Yes.
But they come on their own, like And seek.
Yes, refuge.
Okay, I
We'll
got it.
get into that.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, no, good questions.
I was wondering why all of a
All
sudden-
questions are good questions, no problem. This is the courtyard of the Annunciation House where people could go outside and have food if they wanted to. This used to be a convent, right dear?
Yes.
Yeah. And this, oh, very interesting. So this is the chapel where we heard a migrant's story. Is this the time for me to talk about that now?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we were there was a family from Venezuela. A father, a mother, their 17-year-old son, their 26-year-old daughter with her husband, and their couple's little girl. She was about 3 or 4 years old. They were sitting in the front here and telling their story, how they came from Venezuela to the United States, like what happened. So in Venezuela, the husband was a successful businessman. They had a home. Their children were comfortable. Everybody was good. But the husband spoke up against the regime, against the government. Well, that didn't go over too well. Their house was confiscated, their assets were confiscated, the business was confiscated, and they were on the run, literally. They literally ran for their lives. Okay? And part of that journey took them through the Darien Pass in Panama, which is a hellhole. It's in the jungles of Panama, and if you break your leg, if you sprain your ankle, no one can carry you. It's full of mud and logs and dirt. You are left literally to die on the side of the road.
And the road isn't really a road,
No.
it's a path.
It's a pass through the jungle. You are literally left to die. Family members were leaving family members to die on the side of the road because they could not carry them. There was no way for them to transport and help carry their injured or sick family member or friend. Okay, so they go through the Darien Pass, they all survive that. They land in Mexico. Well, they've run out of money because they have to start paying. The cartels run Mexico. They are running that country. They meet up with a man who seems nice. He has a big house. Somehow they meet him in the street somewhere, and they said, we're looking for work. We need money because we want to get to the United States. He said, I'll take you in. We're having a big wedding at our house tonight. You can serve. You can be the servers tonight. You can serve the meal. And they said, oh, great. And he said, and the next morning, I'll get you to where you need to go to move ahead. I'll pay you, and then you can go ahead. So there was the wedding. They served. That's fine. They slept in the house. Next morning, not so fast. Apparently, he was a cartel member. And people were coming to take them for trafficking. He took pity on them and said, okay, you can go, just run. So how did they run? They got under a train, attached themselves to the undercarriage of the train to take them through Mexico. The husband was telling the story. He couldn't stop crying. He was sobbing uncontrollably. The wife was sobbing. The husband of their daughter was. It was hysterical. They were hysterical. They were reliving that trauma as they were telling their story. The nun from Norway, who was sitting to my right, she was young. She was 20 years old. Very sweet young woman. She understood English perfectly. She spoke it perfectly. Her eyes were closed. And she held her hands in prayer, and she was praying. She couldn't listen to what they were saying. It was so painful for her. Sister Deidre saw it and spoke with her afterwards to kind of help her process what she was hearing. The nun was traumatized by the story. Okay, the novice, traumatized by the story. So this is the chapel where we heard this story.
Yeah. One thing I'd add, the man said that he never couldn't imagine anything worse than the Darien Gap until he got to Mexico. And the experience they had in Mexico was worse than the Darien Gap.
There is a book called American Dirt that follows a woman and her young boy traveling through Mexico trying to get to the north
Great.
with lots of details. It's fiction,
Yeah.
but I believe it's taken from lots of true stories. American Dirt. It's
I read that.
a marvelous book and devastating.
Does this help people see a little bit better?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
So I took this picture, Sister Deidre, who is standing here, took us to a mountaintop where the sun was setting. And I took a picture of her. This overlooks El Paso. It's kind of hard to see, but it's very dry, very dusty. This whole drive into Texas through New Mexico was very dry, very dusty. But the thing that struck me that I have to say is that when we were in New Mexico, because we went from northern New Mexico all the way down to El Paso, which is right there at the border, the trains that were going back and forth on either side of us as we were driving south, some going north, some going south, you could see the amount of trade. The containers were how many containers on one train?
Over 100.
Hundreds, going
Is it-
back and forth, back and forth. The
Metal
amount of
container?
trade.
Was this you in the trade?
No, like containers.
Supplies.
But the containers that you put on they put
Yeah,
up in
like
the
maybe
back of the
car
Right,
truck?
shipping
parts.
containers.
Car
Oh.
parts, electronic parts, clothes, all of that. Maybe some vegetables, avocados. I mean, everything was going back and forth. It was incredible. We'd never seen anything like it.
Oh my God.
Yes, Darien Gap you mentioned, I looked it up. It's 60-mile section where it's really not a road.
Yeah,
Right.
right. It's through the jungle. Yeah. So, honey, I think this is where you pick up with the historic access road.
Okay. Fine.
Oh,
Okay.
and this is the sunset. I'm sorry. This is the sunset. So you can see El Paso in the foreground, and in the distance is the mountains. That's Mexico.
The dichotomy of the beauty of the photos and the horror of your stories
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
overwhelming.
The other thing that picture shows is that we wanted to mention is that El Paso is organically, it's one city in two countries. And until recently, it functioned like a city. They actually had a trolley that ran from the American section into the Mexican section. And people on a daily basis were traveling back and forth to work. And that has been not eliminated, but disrupted with the hassles now of crossing the border. But it used to be you could get on a trolley and just go into Mexico and come back. Okay, now, the historic context is that El Paso means the pass. It was the essential, it seems that Mexico, access into the Southwest was constrained by the mountains and desert, and back in 1598 they established El Paso. It's a place where you can cross the Rio Grande. At the same time, there were valleys that allowed you through the mountains in Mexico. So it was good access from what's now Mexico into the Southwest. And for the longest time, it was the route between the two countries.
And that monument.
For people
Okay.
to sneak in, like they were kind of sneaking in through there.
Well, for the longest time, people it was just
For hundreds of years.
people
Minneapolis,
just
St.
traveled.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
it was a
it
travel
wasn't.
route.
I thought it was the
Long before
way to
Texas
sneak
was
in.
long,
You
right.
just crossed over to go to work in the morning.
Or,
and
or bring
Right.
things over, or take things back. It was just a route, like a highway, like the Garden State Parkway.
Oh, I got it.
Just free
Got it.
travel back and forth with their
Right.
mules and their horses and stuff like that.
And this is a monument showing where
The original.
the original El Paso was. It was originally just like a little trading post. And in the background, you can see they're building the wall.
Yeah, that was again a week after Trump was elected. So this was 7 days after Trump got inaugurated. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, 7 days.
The
A
building
week.
kept going during Biden's term.
Not like this. This was the sister that took us here, Sister Deidre, said this was not here a week ago.
Right.
None of this construction, none of these fences were up a week ago. I was here a week ago. She said there was nothing here. She expected to show us an open, and this totally blew her away.
Okay, so
Next one, dear.
yeah, so yeah, like you say, they're going nuts with building this thing, and it's the new wall that they're building is roughly about 20 feet high with razor wire or actually triple razor wire at the top.
Yeah.
Let me show them the picture of us.
Of sister.
So you can get some idea of there we are standing in front of it. And
yeah.
this didn't have its razor wire up yet.
Right.
And I don't know how
Is it
to
a
put
mesh? It's like a mesh, yeah. Very hard mesh.
Yeah, it's not chain link.
Yeah.
It's a very tight mesh. You can't get your hands in to climb over it. You saw down the road where the razor wire, because this runs alongside of a road, the razor wire came loose and was down in the road, which just a real classy operation the way they did it. And the other thing is, this wall, as probably know, rivers meander. And the wall, they don't want the wall to meander because of course, so they do the wall in a straight line on the American side, which means that people on the American side are cut off from the river. People who have ranches that own land down to the river, their livestock can't get to the river. Down by the river is where the grazing is best because, as you can see from a lot of these pictures, they don't have grass. They hardly have weeds. They have tumbleweed. There's not a lot to eat, but where there's water, they have grazing. But the ranchers' cattle are cut off from the grazing by this wall. And okay, now we get into the crackdown.
Yep.
We want to give you, when you leave, we have a copy of an overview we got on immigration rules. And
From sister.
right.
Yeah.
Basically, what was happening, in order to come into the country legally, there's three ways. They have a lottery that you can sign up for, but they cut the quota out. They've basically eliminated the lottery. You can come on a short-term visa, basically to say shop or various visas. You can go for education, but it's time limited for a specific purpose. You can get a visa to come pick blueberries, but at the end of a limited time, which is normally like 6 months or 3 months or something like that, you have to go back. Or the final one was for refugee status, which was basically what everybody was trying to get. And what previously, if you had refugee status or related to that, it was like the Haitians at that time was and some other and the Venezuelans.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were able to, they got temporary protective status because there was of a disaster. Like after the earthquake in Haiti, a lot of Haitians were able to come because their homes were destroyed and there was no infrastructure. Well, what has happened, they've set up, the system's now set up so you can't apply for refugee status. They stopped taking applications. Years ago, you could go to the border, to the checkpoint, and say, I want to apply for refugee status, and they gave you the form, and then you got a hearing. It might be months away, but you got a hearing, and you were allowed in the country until your hearing and the determination was made.
And the other thing to say, honey, is that the relationship between ICE and the Border Patrol and the local sheriff and Annunciation House used to be friendly. Used to be friendly, cooperative, friendly. Now, Annunciation House, can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's since Trump?
Yeah.
Right. Well, actually, since we got to go there, before they had a working relationship, it helped with the to avoid chaos. Is once people were processed and they had their background checks and they had whatever status they were given, Border Patrol or ICE would actually drop them off and say, these people will help you get where you're going. Now, ICE and the Border Patrol are prohibited from speaking to Annunciation House. They cannot have any official contact.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
They used to give presentations to people who came to the border. Now that's stopped. It's not permitted. Okay, so we get down to the crackdown. I talked about the handout, which we have here. Essentially, there's no new legal immigrants, or they use the term migrants.
Sister kept referring to them
At
as-
all?
No.
Right.
So anybody that comes across now is illegal.
The only people that the people that were in the shelter had gotten their paperwork prior to Trump taking
Yeah,
office.
the Venezuelan family.
So they were there were still some people who still had their paperwork, but were waiting for their connections. You can't, like I said, now you can't go to the border and say, I want to apply for refugee status. It used to be, in fact, according to international law, if you get to American soil, then you have the right to take and make a claim. Well, now they don't do that. Where the fence is, the other side is the United States. By rights, if you get to the other side of the fence, you should be able to wave down the Border Patrol, which is what people were doing prior to Trump, and saying, I want to apply for refugee status. Now they just take them back. They don't get the opportunity.
Pretty sure that that's against U.S. law as well.
Right.
Yeah.
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 But that.
And then they go back into Mexico with
Yeah.
the cartels.
Right. I'm getting there.
Okay.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
being mindful of time. It's
Okay, yeah.
11:30.
Uh,
Yeah.
and as a result of that, the satellites that Annunciation House was using have been shutting down because there was nobody to use them. Federal officials aren't allowed to talk to Annunciation House. There's a case in court now where Texas is trying to seize their records to of who came and who came and where they went, presumably for no good reason. That's in court.
So this picture symbolizes that this is the reception area in Annunciation House, and it's symbolic that there's just nobody there. You know, so they go from thousands of people coming through their doors every week to this.
Okay, so with the crackdown, I want to have one point. Trump isn't the first one to do these things. I got a quote here from a man named Madison Grant. He was big in the eugenics movement back in the 20s. Actually,
The 1800s.
like actually started like 1910, but it was at its prime in the 20s. And this quote is, "The Mexican Indian has no racial qualities to contribute to the U.S. population that are now needed." He recommended that Mexicans in the United States should be deported as fast as they can be located, and funds made available despite the likelihood that a storm of protests will arise from the radicals and half-breeds claiming to be Americans, who will all rush to the defense of their kind. I have to jump because when I laid this out, there's a section, this concept that Mexicans, or that people of Mexican descent in the United States aren't citizens, that they're foreigners. And really, most of the what we call Mexicans are actually Native American. But if you do their DNA, they're not Spanish, or not predominantly Spanish. And
They're indigenous peoples, as
right,
we would say.
yeah, their ancestors have been here for 1,000 years. The Spanish invaded in 1598, and what they did, the Indians, or the people there, fell into basically two groups. You had migratory people, and there were others that were settled and were doing some kind of farming. Well, they really couldn't. The Spanish never had any luck rounding up the nomadic people, and they continued fighting invasion up until the 1890s, when they were finally put on reservations. But the people who were sedentary, they were rounded up, and they were sent to missions, and those missions and the idea was to assimilate them, but they also were able to use the labor, because they were supposedly teaching them how to farm, even though they've been doing that for generations.
And probably knew more about farming
Right.
under those conditions.
But what happened? They lost their tribal identities, and they became a a distinct group.
So you have the presentation by David Ramos?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
I'm going
I
there.
know, I don't want
Okay.
to be,
So,
people have places to go, so.
okay.
Okay.
So I got some numbers for you. In 2021, 55,000 people a day crossed the border in El Paso.
Oh my gosh.
The vast majority of them returned.
We're day,
It was-
day,
it was-
day trippers. So to
Right.
speak.
And, well, they were people that worked.
Yeah.
They might live in
that's
Mexico,
interesting.
they had jobs in the US or
Texas.
vice versa. In 2023, there were 19 million crossings in El Paso, not just the border, but in El Paso. And El Paso is the second busiest port of entry on the border. There's
Yesito
okay,
in California.
that's the busiest. You
That's
don't
the
have the
busiest.
numbers on that. Got some, and he was talking about migration. And we've got some numbers here. There's forcibly displaced people that are leaving, essentially not because they really have a choice, but they feel they don't have a choice. There's in the world now, there's approximately 117 million forcibly displaced people in the world today, 41% of whom are children. Now, the majority of them are internally displaced. They've moved from one place to another in their own country. That's 68.3 million. Refugees, people who have had to leave their country, about 31.6 million. People seeking asylum is 6.9 million. And there's another one which I'm not real clear of the distinction. It says people in need of international protection. That's 5.8. 76% of those people are in low and middle income countries. They're not all coming to the United States. Three-quarters of them are in some other country. Okay.
So,
Now I'm almost done.
okay. Who is David Ramos, first of all?
Okay.
It's hard to do something with your spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. David Ramos, he's a local historian. His family has lived in El Paso area probably since before Columbus. And he's an author. He is the author of this book that is, which if you want to borrow it, you're welcome. It's basically a junior high level book on the border, and he's also a teacher, and he's been doing this for like 40 years. And where I'll get okay.
Did he do a presentation at Annunciation House that you attended?
Yeah, well, not at the Annunciation House. We went to him. They are tied. There is essentially
A community
a coalition of groups doing different things.
working together.
Yeah, they do. They work very closely together.
This was at a church hall. Yeah, actually a school, a Catholic school.
Well, it's not anymore.
Not anymore,
They
but an
closed it
old
in like the
Catholic
70s. But
Yeah.
that was one of the sites that they used as a satellite. They had pictures of when they were at the height where they had lines of people out the door, up the street, down the alley, that were waiting for help. And like I said, a lot of times that help was something as simple as telling them where the bus station was. But it varied.
Do you want me to go to the next slide? It's the cultural.
Right, yes.
There you
And
go.
this is a continuation. Basically, we went to a place that is run by women that had jobs in the garment industry. There was up until NAFTA. They had a system where, say, blue jeans might be started in Mexico, and then they came to the United States and they were finished. And there was how many thousands of women that were working in these sewing shops and some other industries that basically it was international trade. Well, they were all gone. And
This was a restaurant.
yeah, and well, that's what they organized, and they were trying to do things to find other employment. They had they lobbied the community college to have classes in Spanish. They set up a co-op restaurant. They were trying to recover from this disaster that had occurred to them. And I talked about the invasion, the way the people were dispossessed by the Spanish. When the Spanish came in 1598, they made a proclamation that all the land now belonged to the crown. So these people lost any property rights that you would think they would have, having lived there for centuries. And in 1848, when the United States came in, they recognized this, the United States recognized those Spanish seizures. So these people never they were not able to retain the land that they had been living on. The only way they could get it was to buy it from somebody who had a Spanish land grant. Between 1929 and 1939, approximately 1/3 of the citizens of Mexican descent were deported. They just rounded them up and took them to Mexico. There was no
What
consideration
year was that? I'm sorry, I missed that.
between 1929 and
29.
1939.
Oh.
And then Eisenhower did it again in the 50s.
Ah, so-
Where-
Operation Wetback.
Yes. And that was, that's what they've been dealing with. Also, they talked about, they had a history of discrimination in education, employment, and voting rights. For a long time, they weren't able to vote for one reason or another. If your English wasn't good, couldn't vote, didn't have paperwork, couldn't vote. And they're continuing to deal with the repercussions of that to this day.
All right.
And
You ready for the next one?
yep,
Okay.
okay.
You done?
Well, or you can do it if you like.
Well, yeah, I'm just going to
Okay.
that. Yeah. Did you have anything else to say on that section?
No.
No. Okay. So then we're going to do I'll speak from here because it's easier for me to just change things. So one of the things that Sister Deidre did with us, we did a lot that week. We ate a lot at Thai restaurants, which was very interesting. We had lunch almost every day at a Thai restaurant. She loved Thai food, and they had a ton of Thai restaurants there. But one of the things that we did was we went to Mount Cristo Rey, where at the top of it they have a huge cross of Jesus on the cross. They have a huge cross at the very top. It used to be known as Mule Driver's Mountain because people used to be able to go through it. Again, part of that trade going back and forth, transport going back and forth. So it is a very dry, very dusty, very dirty, rugged place that you really, we ended up turning back because the wind that day was so strong, it was literally pushing us over, and the dust was just flying everywhere, right? The dust was just getting in our mouths, getting in our eyes, getting everywhere. So we turned around. It was really rugged, and I needed 2 walking sticks. One of the volunteers at the Annunciation House made me 2 walking sticks out of brooms. She took the broom part off and gave me these 2 sticks so I could try to keep my balance on this mountain. So at the base of the mountain was a porta potty, as you can see on the right, the blue thing. But at the foot of this porta potty was a plastic bag. And in that plastic bag were shoelaces. So I said to Sister, what are the shoelaces? Why is there a bag of shoelaces here? She said, well, what happens is if people are caught crossing this mountain now, they're captured by ICE, and they're told to take off their shoelaces and their belts. So I thought to myself, well, maybe it's because they're going to commit suicide, they're despondent. No, it was because, yes, they were going to hang themselves. They were afraid that they were going to hang themselves in the detention center. So one of the things that they needed at Annunciation House were shoelaces and belts so that people could tie their shoes back up and keep their pants on. Right. Right.
Well, that's actually fairly common in a lot of detention centers. That's not just this place.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody's got suspenders on.
Yeah, suspenders, which Michael does. They would have taken those off too. So this, at the top of this mountain, as I said, was the cross, but there were also stations of the cross, and along the way there was also a statue of Saint Joseph, which is really interesting. So Saint Joseph was not only the patron saint of carpenters and workers, but he was also the patron saint of immigrants. So they had him there. So that was the, what is it, honey?
I got a couple comments.
Sure.
This whole area was originally a copper mine, and the people that worked in the copper mine were all Mexican. And as the mine, that's why they took and they literally built this road up the mountain, and it was essentially a pilgrimage. It isn't supposed to be a leisurely walk. It's supposed to be like a Stations at a Cross.
It was dangerous at some point, yeah.
But what happened? It was also a route that coyotes were taking the migrants over, and
Explain coyotes.
Coyotes are the smugglers, the guys that will take you
that
for
work with the cartels in Mexico.
Pile of money.
Yeah.
right. They'll bring you over, and a lot of times what they do is they sell you to a labor contractor. So they'll bring you over and turn you over to somebody who says, "I'll get you a job," and you go and you're working or you're picking strawberries for so long till you pay them off.
Which you never did.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the migrants couldn't really use the road because what would happen? Border Patrol sits at the bottom of the mountain. So, and there was all these little trails that were from the road you could look down and see. these trails that were weaving around behind the cliffs and all to stay out of sight. They also had Army helicopters flying overhead trying to
Yeah, they
spot people. But basically, they let them come up over the mountain, and then when they got to the bottom, Border Patrol was sitting there waiting for them.
Yeah.
Hence the shoelaces.
Yeah, exactly. So this was kind of at the end of our trip, and where we went from El Paso is we did this all by car. We drove to El Paso. That took us about 5 days, and then from El Paso we went to Phoenix to visit with Michael's family there. We haven't seen Michael's sisters in years, and our nieces and nephews in like decades. So we found a Quaker meeting in Phoenix. And we went to the Quaker meeting, and there's glass windows there, and past the glass windows is cactus. It's all dust and dirt and cactus. That's what it is. This room filled up with over 40 people. Wow. It was, and the age range was like from toddler to like 80 years old.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was families, young families, middle-aged people, senior citizens, and the room was full. And I made contact with the secretary of the meeting, who actually sent us a beautiful quilt for Knitting for Peace, and she posted about Knitting for Peace in their newsletter that she sends out every month.
Is it a lead meeting or?
No.
No, just like this here, exactly like this. So that is the end of our slideshow and our presentation. And
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for doing the presentation.
Yeah,
Michael did most of the work here on
very
this.
brave.
I have this weird feeling that Donald Trump's trying to create an underclass of American people, like not let them in, and that he's going to pay them like $1 an hour, and they're going to have to work.
Well, I have worse feelings than that, which I don't even want to share because it would be like assumptions, major
But
assumptions.
I think there's an ulterior.
Oh, there is an ulterior motive. I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Well, thank you all. Thanks for
Thank
hanging
you so
around.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That was interesting.